Hello, Miss Burkhart.
Hello.
How's your day going?
Good. How's yours?
Good. So we're here to discuss the evaluation that I made last week.
Yeah.
So this is your post-conference, and I just want to remind you that this is a time for reflection and professional growth.
Okay.
So just a summary of your lesson. Your lesson started with a bell ringer,
Yes.
and then you guys reviewed ancient Greece, followed by the reading of ancient Rome, and then the students compared and contrast the two.
Yes.
Okay. So your bell ringer, your students came in and did the bell ringer right away. So great job on your expectation there.
Thanks.
Your bell ringer was done on Google Classroom. What was that bell ringer?
It was, where was Alexander the Great from?
Okay, and is that a review question?
Yeah. So my bell ringers are all content related questions from the day before. So more so to get them in the mindset for class. So when they come from a math class or an English class, we can go directly to social studies with that intro question.
How do you assess your bell ringers?
I grade them at the end of every week. So on Fridays, I grade bell ringers, but they're graded based on the kids' participation. So as long as they put forth an effort to answer the question. So occasionally you'll get a kid who just answers like totally off base, not even content related. Those questions or those answers don't get them points. They do get points as long as they tried. So not necessarily an accuracy, more so on effort.
So the students aren't provided with an answer right away then, correct?
No.
Okay. Could this be something that you review quickly before you start the lesson with the students just to ensure that they got the right answer?
Most days we do. You kind of caught me on a day where it was like in the middle of homecoming week and we had to watch homecoming, the court video, and get voting done. So we were in a bit more of a rush than normal, but on a normal day, it's part of the review.
Okay. So what parts of the lesson did you feel went well?
Overall, at the beginning of most class periods, once we get into a unit, we do a quick review, and that's a unit long review. So as we progress through each section, those reviews get longer and longer. So where you caught us, we were about 3/4 of the way through the unit. So you got us on a long day, but I thought that went well. The kids really enjoy it. They ask about it if we ever don't do a review. They ask when we are. I thought overall the readings went well. The kids seemed like they were working in their groups. They were on task and understood the content in those creation stories, which can actually be kind of hard for them most days. And then they did really well comparing and contrasting. I mean, you didn't see this, but when we went back in the next day and looked at some of those comparisons, they did really well overall.
Yeah, your students seemed very engaged in the lesson.
Thanks. We've been working on it.
So how does each group determine who reads the article out loud?
It varies based on the kind of source we're reading. So normally, and as we get through the semester, those expectations become more clear and they know. With readings that are shorter like this, like the stories that we read when you observed, I let the kids decide. Sometimes a kid will read the whole reading. Sometimes they'll split it up based on paragraph, but I leave that up to the groups. When we get towards we'll read a letter from a Chinese emperor, that's a much longer primary source. So that I will make them split up paragraph by paragraph, and they'll split it, they'll go around the table. Each student will read. The only time there's an exception to that rule is with some of our IEP students who just physically can't.
Right.
And the groups do awesome with that too.
Yeah.
They don't ever I've never heard a kid made a comment about it. So
Yes, I did notice you do have a very respectful classroom.
I do.
So I liked how you connected perspective to classroom behavior. You mentioned how if an incident happened in your classroom and you and the student both talked to the principal, that you guys would have different stories.
Yeah.
Okay, just because you perceive things different. Did you plan that, or was that on the fly?
It was on the fly during second period. So when you observed fourth period, that was something it just worked second period. But I don't know, with history, especially when we're ancient civ, it's easier for the kids to understand stuff if you use examples that make sense to them.
Yeah.
For historical perspectives. They usually, I mean, if it doesn't apply to their life, they don't care. So those examples help with that.
Okay. I really liked your review in the beginning, and you said you do that daily, correct?
Almost every day, yeah.
And is that verbally usually that you do?
Yeah, we usually do them verbally. It's supposed to be a quick review overall. It's not designed to be necessarily an assessment of any kind.
Right.
Like I'm not really assessing their learning. It's more so for them to keep up, especially over weekends.
Oh, yeah. I really like that you reviewed that Venn diagram because we know some students might forget what that is. You also had the students compare and contrast ancient Greece and ancient Rome. So you really reached that high level of Bloom's on there. So good job.
Thank you.
Another great thing is your differentiated articles. So is that something you've always done, or did you kind of change that up since you've gone through?
The first time that I did this lesson, I only used that harder version. So the first version had a lot less details. It was very this is just the story. The second one is very detailed. It provides a lot more information for the kids. I used to only use that one, and they would really struggle. They needed a lot of support from me. They weren't even able to get through it within their own groups, which is when I brought in that second version of the story that was a little easier to read. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed that giving them that foundation makes the second version they're able to do that without as much of my help. So,
yeah. You never gave an answer to the students. You always helped guided them to an answer. Do you typically do this?
Yeah. It drives them nuts, but my classes, the curriculum is designed to be project-based and student-centered. Mm-hmm. So very rarely do I actually give them an answer. I ask them a lot of questions to help them find it. And I've noticed in terms of test scores, those students who actually take that for what it's worth and really try to work through to the answer do so much better.
And I remember there was one with one of your students. She had the right answer, but you made her just dig a little deeper to get more details in her answer. So I thought that was really good.
Thanks.
You had laminated articles. What is the purpose of that? Have you ever thought about them writing notes on it?
Yeah, they do. Depending on how much time we have and the kind of activity we're doing, though any readings or sources that the kids read that are laminated so we can highlight and write on them. Mm-hmm. So depending, I've used these stories to teach annotations before. So depending on what skill we're working on, and they'll highlight directly on to those documents. In the past, I have laminated Venn diagrams. Those Venn diagrams are usually what we do the Roman creation story compare and contrast on. Okay. But we didn't do it this year because we're trying, as a social studies department, we're trying to get through more curriculum than we normally have. So some of that stuff gets cut out.
Yeah. Another great thing I noticed too is your time management and classroom management. So you had homecoming video. They had to vote for the king and queen. You had yearbook coming in to take pictures. And through all of that, you had so many transitions and so many interruptions. Your students just continuously just stayed on task through all of those. And then you had 4 minutes left of class. And rather than just stopping, it would have been a great stopping point, but you just had them continue and do that similarities rather than just having that free time at the end. So thought that was a good job.
Thank you.
So what would you change or add to your instructional strategies when you do this lesson again?
I think when it came down, obviously you haven't seen when I've done it in the past with the laminated stuff. but it worked a lot better when I did have them as a team go through and compare and contrast and fill it out on their laminated Venn diagram. Because then on the board, we would do a large Venn diagram as a class. And that, in my opinion, works a lot better. And the kids seem to grasp the concept a lot easier, as long as we've gone through it together multiple times. I think this year I switched to the Venn diagram on the document, like on the Google document, because we're trying to get through it a lot quicker, and doing it as a whole class takes a lot more time. But when it comes down to it, I think we're just going to have to figure out different places to cut curriculum so that we can do some of those activities that are beneficial to the kids. I just think I'm going to have to go back to it. I don't think it went as well as it has in the past.
Well, at least you tried something new.
Tried something new. It worked. It just could be better.
Is there any way you could restructure your review so that all the students are participating, not just like a few selectives?
I think if I wanted to restructure it, I would, for every student to be actively participating, I think it would have to be like in table groups. So rather than a large class review like we did, I think we would need to, like, I would type up the questions and give each table group the questions to go through as a team. It would take more time, but I think it's doable.
Yeah, there's a lot of different options you could do. You could do, just a quick think, pair, share, popsicle sticks.
Popsicle sticks could work.
You do popsicle sticks in your classroom. So, no, it was good. I just noticed that that middle group that you had there, not many of them were answering the questions. So,
yeah, they're a quieter group.
Yeah. So what did you observe as the groups worked together, reading the article and working on the Venn diagrams?
They do really well with those, with the readings and with the Venn diagrams. My purpose when they're working on things like that, I'm looking for kids that are struggling with words. When we're reading primary or secondary sources, like the ones that we were reading in class, if I miss a kid and I'm not walking around to like help them with the vocabulary in those readings, I'll lose them. So my primary purpose is there just so that I can help them. Okay, what is this word? What does this word mean? Things like that. Once they get working on the Venn diagrams, it's more so I know, like, okay, are they all getting the same concepts? What information am I going to have to supplement later? How do we, do I need to stop and back up and go through this as a group? Which I didn't need to. We reviewed it the next day and they were like, the kids did a great job, but there was one other class period where we had to stop and reevaluate what we were putting in our Venn diagrams.
Yeah. So how do you think it goes with only like one student reading the article at your table, and there's only one article at your table? How do you think that works out?
It honestly works better than giving every student an article or a copy. When they're reading when they have one document, it forces the kids reading the document to slow down and read every word. And it forces the kids who don't have a document in front of them to actually listen to what's being read. When you give every student a document, and we do this a lot with primary and secondary sources, and anytime we read, actually, you're going to skim over groups of words or of different phrases, and you're not actually reading everything, you're skimming it. So by only providing one or two documents per table group, it forces them to slow down and actually read and process what they're reading.
And is that something you collaborated with the English department, or?
It was a trick I learned in college. When we were teaching primary and secondary sources, it was something my education professor really stressed to us, is not providing everybody with a copy if it's something you actually want them to read. So the idea for social studies should be, if you're giving everyone a copy, expect it to be skimmed. If you give one copy, you should expect it to be thoroughly read and understood.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good trick.
It is. It's worked so far.
Oh, good. So how are you progressing toward your professional goals?
My goals this year are, well, like my ITPDP goal is project-based learning and like restructuring a curriculum. And so as we are working towards like rewriting the social studies curriculum as a whole, I'm actually having to figure out, okay, what's working and what's not. So like this lesson, you said from the outside it looked like it worked. Since I've seen it done multiple ways, I think it's something that could use another look and figure out, okay, where else could we cut in terms of professional goals, as well as like how to keep the kids engaged and make sure that every kid is understanding. Because when we do that large group stuff, it works really well and the majority of kids are like doing well.
Right.
But I need to figure out how when we do those table groups to make sure that like the kids aren't falling through the cracks.
Right.
If one or two aren't answering.
Yeah, that's always a tough one.
It is.
So, from our discussions today, what are some things that you would like to work on for growth?
I mean, I'm trying different reviews. So the reviews that we do, I mean, generally I keep them the same, but it'd be interesting to see how the kids like some different options, like doing table group reviews, things like that, as well as looking at the overall curriculum as we start to cut content and figure out what areas just can't be cut, which activities are beneficial to kids and should be kept overall, I think are things that we can continue to work on.
Good. So what are let's talk about goals then. What can we do? So if I came and looked at your classroom next week, what could you work on for that review?
I might try one of those table reviews and see if I can get every kid in their table actively participating.
Okay.
So we'll probably try that.
Okay, so if I pop in then at the beginning of your class, just a pop in next week and observe that, you'd be okay with that?
That would be fine.
Perfect. Is there anything that you need from me for support right now?
I don't think so. I think more feedback is better. So when you do come in, I'd be interested to see or hear what you think.
Yeah, it was a great lesson overall.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. If you need any questions, you know where to find me.